Hello everyone, welcome to this course on CSS positioning. This is Love Family Web 4 and we post contents on web development. You would see our previous videos. You can go back and check. We have videos on HTML, introduction to CSS, and just a few other things. Now, in this course, basically, we'll be looking at CSS positioning. CSS positioning basically controls how elements are positioned inside of your web page. I have five types of positioning, and we'll be looking at all of them as we progress. So here in our HTML, we have a header, we have a topic, that's the header of this page. Um, we have a box, the parent, and then a child, and then we have some content here just to aid our scrolling, and we'll see why as we go further. So the first type of positioning we'll be looking at is static positioning. And this is basically like the default position of every element in your web page. And I think it's something you would rarely use, so we won't really spend much time on static positioning. But just to mention it, static positioning is like the default position of every element in your web page. And how you declare your position for any element is to now notice nothing happens when I put a position of static here. That's because it's just like we're declaring what already is. This is the default positioning for every element inside of your web page. So you would rarely use it unless probably you already given a position to an element and then you want to redefine it back to its default position. That is when you might have to use static positioning. But overall, you might almost never use static positioning in your design. So let's jump to the next one where we're looking at relative positioning. For relative positioning, the element is positioned relative to its normal positioning. Now, how does that work? We use this basically when we just want to, don't we really don't want to alter the flow of our web page. We just maybe probably want to shift things from side to side. Then we can use our relative positioning. Now, notice when I declare this, I notice nothing happens. Right? That's because okay, we already have it left declared here. Let's get rid of this. Now notice when I declare this relative positioning, nothing happens. That's because this is being declared relative to its normal position. So we can use the top, let's say 30 pixels. Moves down 30 pixels, we can say left, say 40 pixels. Let's say 80. And then notice how it moves now. This is moving relative to its normal position, so it really doesn't alter the flow of your web page. Just move things from side to side, top, bottom, just move them around, not really affecting the flow of other elements and stuff. So that's how your relative positioning works. It is positioned relative to its normal position, so it doesn't really alter the flow of the elements. Let's get rid of the top and left. Now, the next we'll be looking at is absolute positioning. Now, this is really tricky one, but pretty much straightforward, just like a relative positioning. Now, the absolute positioning kind of positions your elements relative to the nearest parents with a positioning inside of it. So, how that works is when you declare a position of absolute, it's the element is positioned relative to the nearest parent element with a positioning with a position declared. Now, if there are no positioning on the parent element, it's going to be positioned to the body of your page. Now, let's see how that works. So, notice here on the parent element, we already have a position of relative. Now, we declare a position of of absolute here. Now notice nothing happens here. But now if we give it a top of say 50 pixels, now notice it is 50 pixels inside of this parent element. Now why is it so? It is because we already declared a positioning for our parent element. Now if we decide to, let's say, alter this a little, now it is now positioned relative to the body of our element. Now, why? Because the parent element no longer has a positioning declared. So in that case, it's now going to be positioned to the body of our web page. So to work with absolute positioning, the parent element that is housing the element you want to position should have a relative positioning to it. If that does not happen, it is going to be positioned relative to the body of your HTML. So let's give it back, that back. Um, let's give it a left, say 60 pixels. And everything that is happening, is happening within these our parent elements because we already declared a relative positioning for the parent element. If there were no relative positioning declared for this parent element, then the absolute positioning is going to be for our it's going to be for the body of the element instead of the parent element. So if you want to work with absolute positioning, be sure to always add a relative positioning to the parent of the element that you want to work with, or else your element is going to be positioned to the body. And what this does is basically it breaks the flow of the elements. Um, let's give this, let's get rid of this. Let's break this a little. Then let's change this to absolute positioning. Now, notice it breaks the flow. It's as though it no longer exists inside of this web page. All the other elements just kind of, in a way, forgets that there is an element there. So we can throw in, let's say, a Z index here of 1, just to kind of like bring it to the front. So basically how Z-index works, it's for stacking of elements on each other, but we will not be going into that. But just to show you how absolute positioning works, it kind of breaks the flow um, it brings the elements out of other elements. So it's as though the other elements, they just kind of forgets that there's something like that, no longer pays attention to it. Why? Because it's already broken out of the flow. Now, when we declare a position absolute for this element, declare a position absolute for this element, now it is positioned relative to the body of our HTML. If I give it a top of say 20 pixels, okay, so I have a top of 20 pixels. Let's say left, say 40 pixels. And it's just moving on its own out of the flow of other elements. So absolute positioning kind of breaks the flow, you know, just removes it from the flow of the web page. So in case you want something like that, then you can use absolute positioning for that. Now let's get rid of this. Let's throw in our relative positioning here. Okay, I think our flow is back on. Okay. Now, the next kind of positioning we'll be looking at is your fixed position. Now, how that works is maybe you want an element to kind of just stay stuck to your screen. You don't want it to move. That's when you are going to use your fixed positioning. So we have our H2 here. Let's give it a position fixed. Now, first of all, notice what happens. It breaks it out. It changes it from a block level element. Now, notice when you scroll, it's just fixed to your web page, and it also breaks out of the flow. It kind of breaks out of the flow and it's stuck where you put it. We can throw in a top of say 0 pixels, and then it's stuck to the header to the top of our page and does not move. But we really might not want this because we might have an issue of just kind of stacking another elements and also breaking your design. Although you can maybe throw in a padding top or a margin top to your header to solve this. Let's say 30 pixel margin top, and then kind of solves that. But you really don't want this to happen. So this is basically how your fixed positioning works. It just kind of keeps the elements stuck to your web page. You scroll and scroll and it's just there. So we use this for when we want a part of our element to just stay stuck. We can also change this back to a block level element by putting a left 0. Sorry, that's 0. This was supposed to be left, and then right 0, and then we get it back to block level elements. But it still stays stuck to your web page, just like that. You can use this when you need your header to stay stuck, probably your navigation bar, you want it to stay stuck to your web page, and you want it to just be there at the top. That's when you use your fixed positioning. And then the last one we are going to look at is sticky positioning. Now, when we declare this, now we had a margin here. Let's get rid of this. Okay, so your sticky positioning works in two ways. It works just like a relative positioning and also has the feature of your fixed positioning. So when you declare it your sticky positioning, it works like it's also relative to the position of your elements and doesn't really break your flow, doesn't kind of stack on another. Of course, it does stack on another element, but just like your fixed positioning, your flow is broken, just goes to the top and then it stays there. But this is relative to the position it was before its own primary position. But when you scroll, it just stays stuck to your screen. You give it the top of 0, and that is how your sticky positioning works. So that's all for positioning. If you have any question, you can also put in the comment section.